The presidency of the United States of America is often said to be one of the most powerful positions in the world, but all of accuse using that power. Only one has left office as a result. Does Richard deserve to be remembered for more than the scandal that ended his presidency? Find out as we put disgraced president's legacy on trial in history. Process Richard. Order. Now, who's the defendant today? Some kind of clock? No, you are not. This is Children's Millhouse next, the 37th President of the United States, who served from 1969 to 1974. Hold on. As a weird number of years for President to serve. Well, you see, President Nixon resigned for the good of the nation, and pardoned by President Ford, who took over after him. He resigned because he was about to be impeached, and he didn't want to extend crimes from this person. And what were these crimes? Your Honor, the Watergate scandal was one of the grossest abuses of presidential power in history. Nixon's men broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters. The wiretap dig up that opponent re-election campaign. It was established that the president did not order this burglary, but as soon as he learned of it, he did everything to cover it up, while lying about it for months. So yes, but it was for a good of the country during his time in office, and could have done so much more without the scandal jeopardizing his accomplishment. Your Honor. Did you know it was President Nixon who proposed the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency and signed the National Environmental Policy Act into law? Not to mention the Endangered Species Act, Marine Mammal Protection Act, expansion of the Clean Air Act. Sounds pretty progressive of him. Progressive? Hardly. Next, the president can cut his southern borders through fear of resentment and the civil rights movement. Speaking of President Kirby may be surprised to learn that the signed Title IX announcement banning gender-based discrimination in education and ensure that this desegregation of schools occurred peacefully. 18 so that students could vote. He didn't have much concern for students after 4 were shot by the National Guard at Kent State. Instead, he called them banned protesting the Vietnam War, a war he had campaigned on ending, but he did end it. He ended it 2 years after taking office. Meanwhile, his campaign had sabotaged the President peace talk, urging the South Vietnam government to hold out to supposedly better terms, which I might add didn't materialize. So He protracted the war for years, in which 20,000 more U.S. troops and over a million Vietnamese died for nothing. A presidential candidate in that truly it prepared Logan Act of 1999. Oh, I think we're forgetting President Nixon's first achievement. It was normalized ties China for economic ties continue to today. Are we so sure that's a good thing? And don't forget his support the coup in Chile that replaced Democrat re-elected President Allende with a brutal dictator. It was part of the fight against communism, where turning a violent president we opposed communism to begin with, or just the fear of lower class rising up against the rich. President Nixon could never predict the violent Pinochet regime and the communism neglecting the poor. He was guaranteed basic income for all American families, still a radical concept today, and he even pushed for accomplishment and healthcare reform, just the kind of past 40 years later. I'm still confused about the burglary business, but he across Your Honor, President Nixon may have violated a law or two, but was compared all he accomplished while in office. The harm was to democracy itself. The whole point of the ideas Nixon claimed to promote abroad is that leaders are accountable to, and when they hold themselves above the level, those ideals are undermined, and that account of the law are be out of job. Many politicians have compromised some principles to achieve results, but law-breaking and cover-ups threaten our very fabric the nation is built on. Those who do so may find their entire legacy tainted when history is put on trial. The presidency of the United States of America is often said to be one of the most powerful positions in the world. But of all the U.S. presidents accused of misusing the power, only one has left office as a result. Does Richard Nixon deserve to be remembered for more than scandals that ended his presidency? Find out as we put this disgraced president's legacy on trial. In history versus Richard Nixon. Order. Now, who's the defendant today? Some kind of clock? No, Your Honor. This is Richard Milhouse Nixon, the 37th President of the United States who served from 1969 to 1974. Hold on. Also bear the number of years for a person to serve. Well, you see, President Nixon resigned for the good of the nation and was the President Ford who took over after him. He resigned because he was about to be impeached, and he didn't want the full extent of his crimes exposed. And what were these crimes? Your Honor, the Watergate scandal was one of the grossest abuse of presidential power in history. Nixon's men broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters to wiretap the offices and dig up debt and opponents for the re-election campaign. It was established that the president did not order this burglary, but as soon as he learned of it, he did everything to cover it up while lying about it for months. Oh yes, but it was for the good of the country. He did so much during his time in office and could have done so much more without a scandal jeopardizing his accomplishment. Accomplishment? Yes, Your Honor. Did you know it was President Nixon who proposed the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency and signed the National Environmental Policy Act into law? This is a Marine Mammal Protection Act, expansion of Clean Air Act, sounds pretty progressive, huh? Progressive? How right. Nixon's presidential campaign courted thousands of voters through fear and resentment and civil rights movement. Speaking of civil rights, the prosecution may be surprised to learn that he signed the Title IX Amendment banning gender-based discrimination in education and ensured the desegregation of schools occur peacefully. And he lowered the voting age to 18 so that the students could vote. He didn't have much concern for students after 4 were shot by National Guard at Kent State. Instead, he called them banned for protesting the Vietnam War. He campaigned on ending, but he didn't end it. He ended it 2 years after taking office. Meanwhile, his campaign had sabotaged the previous president's press talk, asking the South Vietnamese government to hold out for supposedly better terms, which I might add didn't materialize. So he promoted the each measure 20,000 more U.S. troops and move a million more Vietnamese died for nothing. A president's candidate interfering in foreign negotiation is that treason? It is, Your Honor, a clear violation of the Logan Act of 1799. I think we are forgetting President Nixon's many foreign policy achievements. It was he who normalized ties with China, forging economic ties that continue today. Are we so sure that's a good thing? And don't forget his support of coup in theory. He replaced democratically re-elected President Allende with a brutal military dictator. It was a part of the fight against communism. One reason we opposed communism to begin with was just fear of the lower class rising up against the rich. President couldn't have predicted the violence of Pinochet's regime, and being anti-communism didn't mean neglecting the poor. He proposed guaranteed basic income for all American families, still a radical concept today, and he even pushed for a comprehensive healthcare reform, just the kind that passed 40 years later. I'm still confused about the burger business. Was he a crook or not? Your Honor, President Nixon may have violated our law or two. But what was the real harm compared to all he accomplished while in office? The harm was to democracy itself. The whole point of the ideas Nixon claimed to promote abroad is that leaders are accountable to people, and when he holds themselves above a law for whatever reason, those ideas are undermined. And if you don't hold people accountable to law, I'll be out of job. Many politicians have compromised some principles to achieve results. but law-breaking and cover-ups threaten the very fabric the nation is built on. Those who do so may find their interiors tainted when history is put on trial. The presidency of the United States of America is often said to be one of the most powerful positions in the world. But of all of the presidents accused of misusing that power, only one has left office as a result. Does Richard Nixon deserve to be remembered for more than the scandal that ended his presidency? Find out as we put this disgraced presidency legacy on trial. History versus Richard Nixon. Order. Now, who's the defendant today? Some kind of clerk? No, Your Honor. This is Richard Milhouse Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, who served from 1969 to 1979. Hold on. As a weird number for a president to serve. Well, you see, President Nixon resigned for the good of the nation and was pardoned by President who took over after he resigned because he was about to be impeached and he didn't want the full extent of his crimes exposed. On what were these crimes? Your Honor, the Watergate scandal was one of the grossest abuses of presidential power in history. Nixon's men broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters to wire up top offices and dig up dead opponents for the re-election campaign. It was established that the president did not order his burglary. But as soon as he learned of it, he did everything to cover it up while lying about it for months. But it was for good. He did so much during his time in office and could have done so much more without scandal jeopardizing his accomplishment. Accomplishment? Yes, Your Honor. Did you know it was President Nixon who proposed the creation of an Environmental Protection Agency and signed National Environmental Policy Act into law? Not to mention the Endangered Species and Marine Mammal Protection Act, the expansion of the Clean Air Act, certain pretty progressive hardly. Nixon's campaign quoted Southern voters who feared the resentment of the civil rights movement. Speaking of rights, the prosecution may be surprised to learn that he hears the Title IX Amendment banning the gender-based discrimination in education and ensures the desegregation of schools occurs peacefully. And he lowered the voting age to 18 so that students could vote. He didn't have concern for students. After 4 were shot National Guard at Kent State. Instead, he killed them bombed for protecting the Vietnam War, a war he had campaigned on ending, but he did ended it. He ended it 2 years later after taking office. Meanwhile, his campaign had sabotaged the previous peace talk, asking the South Vietnamese government to hold out for supposedly better terms, which I might add didn't materialize. So he protracted the war for years, in which 20,000 more U.S. troops and over 1 million more Vietnamese died for nothing. A presidency candidate interfering in foreign negotiations isn't that treason? It is a clear violation of the Logan Act of 1799. I think we are forgetting President Nixon's many foreign policy achievements. Normalized ties with China, forcing economic ties that continue today. We so sure that a good thing, and don't forget that he represented Allende with brutal military dictator. It was part of the fight against communism. One tyranny and violence, the reasons we opposed communism to begin with. Or was it just fear of the lower class rising up against the rich? President Nixon couldn't have predicted the violence of Pinochet's regime. And being anti-communist didn't mean neglecting the poor. He proposed guaranteed basic income for all American families, still a radical concept today. And he even pushed for comprehensive health care reform, just the kind of that passed 40 years later. I'm still confused about this burger business, but he crooked or not. Your Honor, presidents may have violated a law or two, but what was the real harm compared to all he accomplished while he in office? The harm was to democracy itself. The whole point of the ideas Nixon claimed to promote abroad is that leaders are accountable to the people, and they hold themselves above the law whatever reason. Those ideas are undermined, and if you don't hold people accountable to the law, I'll be out of job. Many politicians have compromised some principles to achieve results, but law-breaking and cover-ups threaten the very fabric the nation is built on. Those who do so may find their entire legacy tainted. May history is put on trial. The presidency of the United States of America is often said to be one of the most powerful positions in the world. But of the presidents accused of misusing that power, only one has left office as a result. Did Richard deserve to be remembered for more than the scandal and ended his presidency? Find out as we put this disgraced president's legacy on trial. In History vs. Richard Nixon. Order. Now, who is defendant today? Some kind of crook? No, Your Honor. This is Richard Milhouse Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, who served from 1969 to 1974. Hold on. As a very number of President resigned for the good of the nation and was pardoned by President who took over. He resigned because he was about to be impeached. He didn't want to extend his. And what were his crimes? Your Honor, the Watergate scandal was one of the grossest abuses in presidential power in history. The Nixon man broke into the Democratic National Committee's headquarters to wiretap offices and dig up their opponent for the re-election campaign. It was established that the president did not order his burglary, but as soon as he learned of it, he did everything covered up, while lying about it for months. But it was for the good of the country. He did so much during his time in office he could. There's scandalous in his accomplishment. Yes, Your Honor. Did you know it was President Nixon who proposed the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency and signed the National Environmental Policy Act into law? Not to mention Endangered Species Act, Marine Mammal Protection Act, expansion of Clean Air Act, Southern Progressive Hillary. Presidential campaign called Southern Borders through fear and resentment of civil rights movement. Speaking of civil rights, the progressive may be surprised to learn he signed the Title IX Amendment banning gender-based discrimination in education and ensured that desegregation of schools occurred peacefully. And he lowered the voting age to 18 so that the students could vote. He didn't have much concern for students after four were shot by the National Guard at Kent State. Instead, he called them banned for protesting the Vietnam War, a war he had campaigned on ending, but he did end it. He ended it after taking office. Meanwhile, his campaign had sabotaged the president's peace talks, urging the South Vietnamese government to hold other supposedly bitter terms, which I might add didn't materialize. Protracted the 4 years, in which 20,000 more U.S. troops and over 1 million more Vietnamese died for nothing. A presidential candidate interfering in foreign negotiations in that region is no collaboration of Logan after 1799. I think we are forgetting President's many foreign policy achievements. It was he who normalized ties with China, forging economic ties that continue today. Are we so sure that's a good thing? And don't forget his support of the coup in Chile that replaced the democratically elected President Allende with a brutal military dictator. It was a part of the fight against communism. beyond tyranny and violence, the reasons we oppose communism to begin with, or to just be a lower class rising up against the rich. President Nixon couldn't have predicted the violence of being anti-communist. He proposed guaranteed basic for all Americans. It is still a radical concept today, and even pursued comprehensive health reform just the kind of past 4 years after civil confusion. As he clocked on Your Honor, President Nixon may have violated a law or two, but what was real harm compared to all he accomplished while in office? The harm was the whole point of the idea of Nixon from the abroad is that they're accountable to people, and when they hold themselves above the for whatever reason, those ideas are undermined and don't fall accountable to the law or be out of job. Many politicians have compromised some strengths to achieve results, but law-breaking and cover-ups threaten the very public the nation is built on. Those who do so may find their entire lives tainted, and history is put on trial. The presidency of the United States of America is often said to be one of the most powerful positions in the world. But although the president is accused of you being only one has left office. As a result, this Richard deserves to be remembered for more than the scandal that ended his presidency. Find out as we put this disgraced president's legacy on trial in history, but Richard Nixon. Order. Now, who's the dependent to some kind of club? No, Your Honor. This is Richard Nixon, Milhouse Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, who served in 1974. Hold on. As a beard number of years for a president to serve, very easy President Nixon resigned for the good of the nation, and but the president who took about him. He resigned because he was about to be impeached. His president is exposed. What about these crimes? Your Honor, the Watergate scandal was one of the grossest abuses of president's power in history. Nixon's man broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters to wiretap the office, dig up the data on the re-election campaign. It was established that it was not a burglary. But as soon as he learned that he did everything covered up while lying about it for months. Yeah, but it was for the good of the country. He did so much during his time in office and could have done so much more without the scandal jeopardizing his accomplishments. Yeah, no. It was the president who proposed the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency and signed National Environmental Policy Act in law. Not mentioned Marine Protection Act, Expansion Clean Air Act, Senate Progress Hardly. Nixon presidential campaign quoted Southern voters through the peer. Speaking of the prosecution, may be surprised to learn the title amendment banning education and ensure the desegregation of scale occurred in peacefully agitating so that could pop. He didn't have much concern with the World War shared by the National Guard at Kansas State. Instead, he called them for protesting Vietnam War, a war he had campaigned to end, but he ended 2 years after taking office. Meanwhile, his campaign had sabotaged the president's peace talk, urging South Vietnamese government to hold out for supposedly My dad didn't materialize, so Prata for 4 years. Troops and million of Vietnamese died for nothing. President Kennedy interfering for negotiation. Isn't that the reason? Is it your acceleration of Logan after 1799? I think we are forgetting President's many foreign policy achievements. It was who he normalized the ties. Economic ties that today consent and Japan for support up the coup the President Allende is brutally military dictator and part of the against communism. What violence opposed communism to begin with, or just the fear of the lower class rising up against the rich? President Nixon couldn't have predicted very privileged. Didn't mean never poor. Still, article concept today, and he puts the comprehensive healthcare reform. Just kind of I'm still confused about the that part was earlier. The people. Once the principles achievements through brilliant and collapse is written very public. The mission is result. Don't try.